Community Heart Media. Your voice, your heart, your opportunity. Welcome to tonight's show.
I'll tell you what, it's International Women's Day, and I'm very excited about tonight. I've been revved up, been to an International Women's Day lunch where there's only a few blokes there and there's 200 women there. It was quite a powerful time, Julio. What did you do on International Women's Day?
I was actually at the university and watching all the celebrations there. Pretty much stayed at work. I had a pretty busy week this week, so I was on the ground, to be quite honest. I missed out on all of the opportunities, but get all the information for today, which is the special day for females. So it's a great, fantastic day.
It is a very special day, very important day on 98.9 Northwest FM, celebrating International Women's Day. And we've got an amazing person to join with us tonight, have a bit of a chat. Zagi, it's really great to have you on Community Heart Radio.
Thank you for having me, Mark, again. And it's a pleasure to be able to speak today on such an important day, celebrating women.
Now, you are one of our superstars on Community Heart Radio. We love having you on the show. But for those that haven't heard you, tell us a bit about who you are, what you do.
Okay, so my name is Zagi Kozarov. I am the director of Kozarov Lawyers, which is a criminal defence and family law firm in Melbourne, but there's also a small firm in Geelong and Ballarat now. I come from a prosecution background, so I was a prosecutor for many years with the Director of Public Prosecutions here in Victoria, prosecuting some of the most horrific crimes in Victoria. Then I crossed over to the dark side, let's say, and began doing defence work, which slowly led me to dealing with family violence matters. So things like intervention orders and breaches of intervention orders. And I guess, you know, the universe works in mysterious ways, and it opened up the door to family law. So now I deal with family law matters and have been doing that for a number of years, involving parenting and property disputes.
Well, Zagi, you're not someone to me that seems like you get in the shallow end and just paddle around there. You're not someone that just walks on flat ground. You're sort of like a person that climbs mountains, gets in the deep end, really gets involved in the real big stuff of life. I mean, all the things you spoke about, they're quite involved, pretty heavy sort of situations, aren't they?
They are. They're serious situations. They're situations that involve people's lives, like with criminal law, it involves their liberties, so their freedom. And in family law, we're talking about people's families, people's children, people's hard work, their savings. It's often people are very highly emotional. They're very difficult times, both in criminal law and in family law. So you're taking on a lot of emotions and fears that people are experiencing, and you're there to try and reach some sort of a resolution. When you did your primary school and you were in the playground doing all the stuff you did, I mean, you never would have thought you end up where you have now. What's been your passion? What's been your driving force to jump in that deep end of the swimming pool where you have? Okay, so when I was in the playground, Mark, I wanted to be an archaeologist, believe it or not. Yes, but look, on a serious note, I have always wanted to do something involving helping people, and I have always had a fascination with criminal behaviour, which led me to initially study psych and criminology, which then made me study law. And I've worked within Corrections Victoria, so I've worked in the prison systems. I've worked in Pentridge, the old Pentridge, and I've always been fascinated by why do people behave the way they do? People don't behave the way they behave for no reason. So that sort of opened the gate to wanting to practice in law. And because of my passion in crime initially, I obviously wanted to be a criminal lawyer and I wanted to be a prosecutor. So I became a lawyer.
You've opened up a bit of a box here for me. I wasn't going to go this way, but
that's all right.
If you had to say three things about why people do what they do that you've met in the prison system, what would be your top 3 reasons people do what they do in your mind?
Okay, so a product of your environment, so the way people have been raised, what they've seen, so, product of their environment. I think another big issue would be perhaps their peers and their personalities, their temperaments. Are they easily influenced? And probably the next one would be, depending on the crime, it could just genetically be an issue with the way that their brain works. Do they have serious mental health issues? I could really go on and talk about this on a completely different segment.
Yeah, well, we're not going to go that way, because
It's
I did think you maybe
yeah.
defended Julio, but then I remembered most of Julio's crimes been pinching things out of milk bars, things like that. So you're probably not dealing with that sort of stuff, Julio. And I suppose, were you one of those easily influenced people, Julio, in your life?
Me, when I was young, I was an influencer, so I did follow a particular crowd. So I did get into gangs and all that when I was younger, in my really young days, until I was about 15, when I moved suburbs and got into a better environment, not living in the inner city. I think that triggered it off a little bit, hanging around. I was a kid that was brought into Australia and then lived in hostels and stuff, so you get to see a different type of lifestyle. But yes, but once I got into the suburbs, it changed quite a lot. On that question, though, females and male crimes, as we're talking about females, is there a difference?
There are different. Yeah, look, there is a difference, but females tend to commit crimes of passion, I think. Look, but having said that, females commit similar crimes as what males do. But then we can talk about the psychology when it comes to the way a female brain is formed and the way that a male brain is formed and the way that females think. We think very emotionally, whereas male thinks very logically. So again, I could talk about these issues in a whole segment about the way.
Yeah, well, look, we've got Kelly. Kelly's said, great to have on the show, Zagi. It's very good. And we're thinking about Kelly. Unfortunately, Kelly can't be here today. We're thinking of you, Kel, and we hope you'll be back with us next week.
Yes.
Good to have you there. And it is International Women's Day on 98.9 Northwest FM, Community Heart Radio. And we'd love to hear from you. What did you do on International Women's Day? What do you think about International Women's Day? What are the issues? Why is it important? Why do we have it? What does it mean to you? All those questions, look, to put them on the chat, be great to hear from you. But let's just hear from Zagi about what's International Women's Day for you.
Well, International Women's Day to me is a celebration of women, all types of women. However, I think about women I think it's a celebration in particularly about women that have been brave enough to make change, have had the courage and determination and passion to make change and to bring women to where we are now from where we once were. So the movements that have been made over the years, and it took very strong women to make certain changes in our society to, bring women closer to equality. But International Women's Day is a celebration of women and what we represent. And men, we're just as capable of, working in roles such as law that was once highly dominated by males. And things like medicine and many other fields that, even police, for crying out loud, women weren't police officers once upon a time. I mean, if we look at sport, for example, now, there's women playing football, cricket, women are recognised at far more different levels. Like there's all different levels that we're recognised more at. But it took certain women to make those changes happen. And they're women that had immense courage to speak up on behalf of all of us.
Yeah, it's good to think about these qualities of these women leaders, the pioneers, the people out there that have, broken ground for women. I mean, I think it's so exciting. I heard today that women CEOs or women that run businesses are more profitable than the businesses that men run. So, and obviously there's more men running companies than women, but that was an interesting stat for me when I heard today. And the other stat that I found interesting, Julio, is where your superannuation is, all these equity companies, only about 3 or 4% are run by women or got women in leadership. 3 or 4%. That's terrible. Most of the super funds that we invest all our money in are run by blokes. So, and that seems strange when companies run by women are actually more profitable. So, Zagi, that seems to be it was still some work to do for women out there, eh?
That's correct, and I think it's an area that is going to keep flourishing. I think just listening to, say, for example, my daughter and her friends and their attitudes and their views and views of even younger women, they're thinking a lot differently to the way I thought perhaps at their age. So I think the message is getting out there because women that have evolved, like my generation, are teaching the generation after to become fierce and fearless and more passionate and to pursue their goals. And then that message will carry on to the next generation. And I think it's a message that women just keep passing on, that, dare to dream and dare to, accomplish what you believe in, and don't be afraid to speak your mind. So I think it's a message that's slowly passing down. I mean, I remember my own mother's words, and it led me to the path that I'm on at the moment. And she always, from a very young age, and I used to look at her and think, well, what do you mean by that? She used to say to me, Zagi, it's very important that you're independent. And when a woman has her independence, she has choice. And that never really made sense to me until I became a lot older, where certain things happened in my life. And I thought, thank goodness that I listened to some of my mum's words of wisdom. Had I not, I perhaps wouldn't be in the position I'm in now. So that's an example of how messages get passed down from generation to generation. And we're only becoming stronger. So the generation after mine will be stronger, and the generation after that will become stronger, because as women, the sisterhood, let's say, we're teaching one another to raise independent women, fierce women, fearless women, positive women, women that are not afraid to reach where they want to go.
Do you think that
Sorry, where you go?
do you think, because you're a woman in leadership now, and this is a new role for females, like this is a very old role for males. So males have always had a leader place somewhere in society. But now that we've got females moving into those roles, do you reckon that's also increasing the ability for females to think, I can actually do this? And these first women that came across encouraged the first movement, which is like probably your generation, and then later on you're encouraging more.
Yeah, of course, because we're also examples. So I believe in leading by example. So by leading the younger generation of women, and setting an example through yourself, you're leading the next generation of women, especially if they're looking up to you, to become similar to you. And therefore, it's passing the message on that way. So if we, as strong, independent women, and we are all strong, it doesn't mean that just because I'm a lawyer that I'm strong. You look at women that stay at home and are raising a family. They're strong. There's like, some of them are raising 4 children. That's a harder job than going out to work. Juggling children can be extremely difficult. So if we just lead by example and teach the generations to come, that strength and perseverance is very important, and not to lose yourself as an individual and as a woman through a male dominant society. That is important. I think a lot of women can lose themselves, and sometimes even when they become mums, and I'm talking through experience, you tend to lose your identity when you're sort of away from the workforce, and you sort of think, oh, is this all it is? Is this all I've got? You know, it's imperative, I think, as women, that we don't lose our own identity and our own passions and what we aspired to be growing up as little girls. Because let's think about it, you know, from a young age, you're given a doll and you're taught to be a mum and you're taught to feed a little baby. So that's a message that comes across from a very young age to girls, little girls that one day will become women. We're taught, well, you got to feed a baby and you've got to look after a baby and you've got to make cups of tea with your tea sets. I mean, it's I made sure that my little girl had, you know, a doctor's set and, you know, did scientific little experiments on the side. So I tried to break that little tradition. Yes, she had her little dolls and so forth, but it's also important that you raise the younger generation to look beyond the obvious of what we're taught as young little girls, and to realize that, you know, the world is your oyster and you can accomplish whatever you want. It just takes determination and immense passion to get to where you want to get to.
And look, I do agree with you, women being courageous and strong and all that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And you know, it'd be good to keep talking about that. But I also think Kelly's right. The soft skills are a real strength of women as well. And
yes,
Kelly's saying here, 100% of women think very emotionally, and their emotional
Absolutely.
intelligence of women is really powerful, isn't it, out there?
It is. And I see it in my work all the time. Look, yes, I'm a lawyer, and yes, as lawyers, we're taught to be very logical and to not get too attached to the case or emotionally involved. But I believe as human beings that it's very important that you show empathy and compassion. I will never know what my clients have been through, especially certain issues. Some issues, yeah, I may have been through similar, but it's important to show empathy, because I think empathy and compassion, it soothes someone. And I can only talk about my role as a lawyer in the field that I practice in. Sometimes these people just need a little bit of soothing, compassion and understanding and belief in order for them to overcome the hurdles that they're going through. And yes, it can be taxing on you, but that's where, as lawyers, we need to learn how to look after ourselves.
Yeah. We've got a couple of questions, Julio. One from Kelly about the pay. What's the pay like for female lawyers compared to male lawyers? And you know,
well, that's an interesting one. I think they're still not equal as yet, but I think we're slowly getting there. We are slowly getting there, and I think it's not only in law; it's in across many fields that women and men aren't paid equally, sadly, yet. But we have come a long way since the past. It's something that we're all lobbying for, and that is equality when it comes to pays. Yeah, because really we can do the same thing. Let's look at the construction industry even. I mean, there's more females you see in the construction industry. I remember even a few years back that you'd never see a woman on a construction site or even holding up a construction sign, for crying out loud. And now they're everywhere. I mean, you've got females that are taking on apprenticeships in, you know, as electricians, as painters, as plumbers. So who says that women can't do those, become involved in those roles and pursue careers in those roles. It doesn't mean that a woman needs to be a nurse or, a teacher, those traditional roles of women. It's like once upon a time, women would never have been considered as lawyers, and look at us now, or doctors, yeah?
Well, an interesting question for people like Julio that gets overpaid as a male. Are you going to donate some of your pay and equalise yourself out there, Julio, in the workplace? Because your area is very male-dominated. All the males get paid much more than the women. What are you doing about it, Julio?
What am I doing about it? Well, I'm encouraging the females to join what I do. Engineering is very short on females.
Yeah.
And I think that's because I think it's hard to find females now because, like you said, it's pretty much historically trained into them, not just not to do it, but not to think that way. So it's a little bit catch-22. It's hard to find females that are heavy logical, more than emotional, and love things over people. So that's my world. My world's basically things are super important, and I love them. People I've struggled when I was younger. I've learned to adjust a bit more, but I think that's the world of engineering. So, but I'd love to see more females there. We need diversity in all the fields. You need that mindset. To me, it's just great to have a different. We are really bad at administration work. Honestly, I can honestly say that. So, a question for another question here for you is by Bree. How do women become successful leaders? What tips do you give?
That's a question for me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I think successful leadership comes with a lot of hard work and standing out in your profession. And in order to do that, I think you need to be outspoken. You also need to be very passionate about what you do. I think passion is what stands you aside from others. I think if you're passionate, you also are very good at what you do. So without passion, I don't think you'll shine. So by being able to shine in whatever profession you're in, I think you will become a leader. I can't remember the second part of the question though.
It's just about the tips you'd give.
What tips? Yeah.
Becoming a successful leader.
Being determined. You've got to be determined. I mean, leadership doesn't come overnight. Leadership comes with a lot of hard work. Leadership comes perhaps through mentoring. If juniors look up to you as a role model, that's another way of establishing yourself as a leader. A leader is also someone that's courageous to make change in whatever field you're in, and not be afraid to explore different avenues or different ways of doing things. I think that's leadership. Leadership is being able to lead others in the profession or in the group to aspire to think outside the box. So when we go to uni, we're taught a certain way. We're taught different theories. And I don't think this only is about law. This is about most fields, right? So if you're not afraid to think outside that box and you can expand your mind and bring that into the work you do, in time, people will see that you do things differently. And that, I think, is the essence of leadership. If that makes sense.
International Women's Day, we're celebrating and sort of identifying and also bringing to life women that have been courageous leaders out there, women that have really made a difference, women that have really stood out. And Zagi, you've got some examples in your life where you've had to be a little bit courageous, eh?
Yes, there There have been examples in my life where I've had to be courageous. Well, I won't speak about it too much, but I think there's been some massive changes in our community because of the fact that I was courageous to speak up and want to make a change within my profession and many other professions that involve vicarious trauma. So I'm not sure if our listeners know what vicarious trauma is, but vicarious trauma is trauma that you experience because you work with people that have endured immense trauma. So people like myself who practice in criminal law, or police officers, firefighters, nurses, doctors, paramedics, social workers, examples of professions that experience vicarious trauma. So you're so heavily involved with victims and what they've been through that it's almost a way, I'm trying to simplify it, it's a way that you're sort of reliving their own experiences, and those experiences haunt you. So I basically, through a, let's say, over 10-year battle, raised awareness of the importance of mental health in the workplace. And the journey there for me started when I was a prosecutor in the Specialist Sex Offence Unit, and I was prosecuting some of the most horrific crimes in Victoria involving sex offences. In particular, many of my cases involved young children. So I was exposed to a lot of graphic images and worked with highly emotional situations whereby it affected me, and I developed post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was very outspoken about how that was affecting all of us in the unit and as a profession. Back then, people didn't talk about it as openly as what we're talking about things in the workplace now. But I think my case, and I'm not speaking against the DPP because I am the lawyer I am today because of the DPP. The DPP taught me everything I know. But I think as a society, we've come very far in educating ourselves about mental health and about issues such as vicarious trauma and how it impacts us, and why it's so important for wellness to be an important factor in our workplace. So yes, there's a case, my case, that created precedent in this field, and the ruling came down only last April 13th, and unfortunately the battle went on all the way to the High Court of Australia, and that ruling was a unanimous ruling, so all 7 judges ruled in my favour. I originally won the trial, then the Court of Appeal threw out my arguments, and then I appealed to the High Court of Australia and won. And now it's created some amazing changes in our workplace, especially in the workplaces involving vicarious traumas. Places like the Coroner's Court. People don't realise what we see and what we have to deal with and how it impacts us as parents. I mean, it hit me hard when I became a parent. I had children. My children at that time were the same age as children that I was working with. I became an overprotective mother. I was dreaming. I was having nightmares. I was afraid to do certain things. So post-traumatic stress disorder is a serious condition, especially involving positions involving vicarious trauma. A lot of soldiers, for example, experience vicarious trauma. Journalists, depending on what area they work in, experience vicarious trauma. So I think I had to have immense courage to pursue this avenue, not only for myself, but for all of us and for everyone involved in these type of roles. It wasn't easy for me because I felt judged by my peers because I think people thought I was doing it for different reasons. And I had to be determined to go all the way to the High Court. I cannot tell you how excruciating that experience was for me. And I'm a lawyer, let alone someone that's not a lawyer, to have to go through that, being cross-examined and my whole life being aired and my dirty laundry just, coming out on transcript because I was cross-examined for days. But I made a change, and yes, it's affected me, that whole experience, but it was worth it because I've changed things in the workplace dramatically.
Well, you're one of the women that we're celebrating today on International Women's Day. Zagi, you've actually, for your determination and your courage, and Bree asked, what are the successful, how do you become a successful woman? What are the tips? Well, the courage, determination, you were there and you've actually achieved something in history for other women and other workers. So that's an amazing, and we really appreciate you sharing your story and what happened on 98.9 Northwest FM. We are here on International Women's Day. We'd love to hear how you celebrate International Women's Day, what it means to you. Have you got your own story? What would you want to ask Zagi tonight about women and having this courage? And there's no doubt you're an amazing leader out there. And I know in your own business, that's important to you to be that great leader, that example as well. I think you've shared that before with your own staff, Zagi.
Yes. I am passionate about mentoring. I do love to teach. I like to make changes in other fields. And I think you and I have spoken, Mark, even at lectures about, the changes that need to happen when it comes to drugs in our society and how people that use drugs are perceived by the general public. So those type of issues, issues surrounding mental health and crime, and how often people with mental health issues are mistaken for being drunk or drugged, but in actual fact, they're suffering from mental health issues such as schizophrenia. And a lot of people in power, like police and even, us as lawyers or, the judiciary, we're not trained to be able to identify these issues. And I think it is a real big problem in our society. I think we need to become well-versed with being able to identify people that have serious mental health issues and not mistaken it for being drunk and disorderly or perhaps drugged. There's a lot of things that I'm passionate about speaking about. Yeah.
It's great, isn't it? And I suppose one of the questions I've got is that, and you've touched that again, you've opened up a whole range of subjects tonight. We could spend an hour on all of them. But it's just trying to understand people's motives for doing things in life. I think we all in our own lives sometimes don't understand why people do things, whether it's a crime, whether it's in your friendships, your relationships, in your workplace. People can act very strangely sometimes. And sometimes we say it's their mental health. Sometimes it's other factors. I mean, how do you find navigating that sort of world where you're trying to understand what's going on around you? What are some of your tips about that?
It's an interesting question because I think over the years, from being a young lawyer in my 20s to being a woman that will be 50 this year, I've learnt different things about people's personalities and behaviours. And I think that comes through life experience. You're not taught this at university, and there's no real book that's going to teach you that. I think life experience and dealing with a whole different array of people, personalities, teaches you to be able to identify what the fundamental issues are. Some things come to mind. I had a case where someone was being prosecuted for a large commercial quantity of cannabis and trafficking cannabis. But looking at it at face value, you'd think, oh, okay, so all these, notes, that appears sort of perhaps to be money owed to a drug dealer. When you look a bit closer, I noticed that it wasn't the typical drug trafficker. He actually had only female plants being grown. And when I interviewed the accused, I noticed that he couldn't make eye contact with me. And I also noticed he had very poor social skills. And then when I read the record of interview, I noticed other things, like he was asking for a can of Coke. And he was saying to the police, I think my insulin levels are low. And you could see as that time was passing in the record of interview that his answers weren't coherent. So the alarm bells went off for me. Number one, he must be a diabetic. He needed sugar. And when you get to a certain level, you can't think clearly, number one. But that's through life experience. Number two, I thought to myself, well, this gentleman mustn't be a drug trafficker because he's got all these books. He's researching something, because they weren't notes on money owed to him. They were almost like statistics on the plants, the different female plants he was growing. Cut a long story short, this gentleman I had assessed, and he suffered from Asperger's. And in actual fact, he was growing these plants to come up with a cure for diabetes and cannabis. And we've learned so much more about the cannabis plant these days too, from back then. Has an anti-inflammatory property, and he was trying to come up with a cure for diabetes. Genuinely. So how could I identify that? I identified it because of life experience, maybe my training in psych or, crim behavior. But I did defend him, and I got a great result. To the point, like, I remember he kept in contact with me and then started talking to me about the benefits of black chickens and their eggs and them being black and the healing properties of those eggs. He was one of the most smartest men I have ever, or one of the smartest people I've ever actually met in my life. He made his own fabrics. He composed his own music. So I've come across such amazing different characters in my work. And I think that's a blessing, which helps me identify all different issues. But that
Julio, look, I know it's only chocolate bars, Julio, you're getting going to the police with, but I would get Zagi to represent you, mate, because a passionate lawyer like this with great outcomes. I mean, what do you think, Julio? She's amazing.
She is. It's amazing.
Would you get her to defend you at court?
Oh, of course I would, yes. She seemed pretty good. Like, you seem really knowledgeable, and I like the fact that you're putting down that knowledge isn't just learnt in books, it's actually an experience thing. You got to go through those processes.
That's right. Yeah. It's the same thing when I choose staff to work with me. I don't go by their grades, because to me, your marks say one thing, right? And really, to me, it symbolizes a test of your memory, sitting down in an exam and being able to recite answers. True knowledge comes through work experience, life experience. What have you done to volunteer your time before you've come to me for work. Have you volunteered your time working with youth? Have you volunteered your time working perhaps for corrections? What have you done apart from working in retail to help you expand your mind and views about the work you're just about to embark on? I'm talking about my own field. It's imperative, and that's a message for the young women, if they're listening tonight, that getting your foot in the door and obtaining as much work experience, even if it's for free, because you know what? Knowledge is power. And the more knowledge you accumulate, the wiser you become. And the wiser you are, the better at your role you are.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Zagi, we're going to struggle to get your tips down to 5 because I've probably heard about 15 great tips on the show so far, Julio. Now, if you want to ask Zagi another question before we get on to the top 5 or during the top 5, make sure you put a comment. It's 98.9 Northwest FM, Community Heart Radio, celebrating International Women's Day today. And we've got Zagi, one of Melbourne's top lawyers, one of Australia's top lawyers, with us, really talking about the courage, determination, the leadership that women show, and we just want to celebrate that. Zagi, just before we got onto your top 5, and which I'm really looking forward to, is there any other women that you know out there that's sort of like your role model that we could celebrate tonight on Community Heart Radio? I know that's a left question without notice.
There's some judges that I really look up to that I've worked with in the past. I'm going to get emotional saying this. The Chief Justice of the Magistrates Court, who I worked or appeared before in the county court when she was there, Judge Lisa Hannon, I look up to. I think she's an amazing woman that's brought along about a lot of change in our legal system and has implemented a lot of noticeable changes in the law, in my opinion. A fairly new judge that I think is amazing and was an amazing barrister, Angela Alice, her Honour Judge Alice, I think is an inspiration to many women and is a courageous woman. There's lots of women, all the women and men, but sex offences was dominated by females. That unit there, I think all the women that worked in that unit were amazing women that were a breed of their own to be able to do the work that they did and do still now. I think they remained fierce and passionate and determined to achieve the results they did, even though they were exposed to a lot.
It is pretty emotional, isn't it? I mean, I think it is good on International Women's Day to call out some women that have made a real difference and women that you respect, women that you know, have made an impact on your life. I mean, I was with my mother last night. She's 84, going to be 85 in June. Just an amazing woman when she talks about her life, never been educated, was a single mom bringing up 3 kids with no money. She became a nurse, not through qualifications, but they gave her a go and she became a nurse and she overcome so many things in her life. Just an amazing woman. And I wouldn't be talking to you tonight on radio if it wasn't for my mum. So I'd like to make a call out to my mum on International Women's Day and just an amazing, amazing woman. And thanks, Mum, for everything you've done. And I love the friendship we have. What about you, Julio? Have you got a woman that you can call out today?
Yeah, well, same thing, Mark. I got my mum. She passed away on me. She passed away from cancer, but she was a wonderful, for me, my best role model I ever had. Like, she put in so much time in. I was an awful, like I said, young kid, and she dealt with that pretty well. So, I'd like to, congratulate her about what the person that she brought up. Me and my sister were both done really well for ourselves and followed the moral values that she really installed into us. And also a good friend of mine from the military, Christy Crabtree. She was an amazing woman again, a survivor, and she's now pretty much does marathons and carries on to an amazing person. So, I'd like to put her as well on that pedestal as well. It's been an amazing.
Yeah, good on you, Julio. And if anyone has got any people they want to make a call out to, just put that in the chat, because it is International Women's Day. We're celebrating women. And I feel so privileged that we've got Zagi here. And I'm just looking forward to your top 5, Zagi, you're going to share with us. And why don't we try with your first tip on International Women's Day? We might make this for women.
Okay.
We're talking to women, International Women's Day. What would be your number 1 tip?
My number 1 tip would be have courage. Be courageous. That would be my first tip. Courage is very important.
And Zagi, can I ask you, is that something natural, or can we build up our courage? Can we get some courage?
I think you can get some courage. It's through determination, I think you get courage. So that would be my number 2 tip, determination. Be determined
get some of that
to
too?
achieve and accomplish what you want and what you believe in. And you need courage to do that, because if you have no courage, you don't take risk. And number 3
hang on, before we go to number 3, let's just quickly go over. We've got courage as number 1, and that's something that if you're not feeling courageous, you'd encourage women can grow that, can find it, can gain it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you can find it within yourself somewhere, just like the lion did in The Wizard of Oz.
Okay. And then once you've got your courage, maybe not in that order, but then determination, because I tell you what, there's a lot of obstacles in life, isn't there? And you've got to be determined to work through those obstacles, yeah?
That's correct. And if you don't have determination, you won't get very far. You need to remain determined and focused. Yeah.
Now, you've had some of this naturally, or did you find determination as well?
Well, a bit like your mum, Mark. I was a single and am a single mum, and have been a single mum since my children were very young. So if I wasn't determined and didn't find that determination within myself, then I wouldn't have been able to keep going and be able to look after them. So I had to find ways to be able to support them on my own. I had to, find the courage to open up my own law firm in order to support them even better. I had to keep going. So if I wasn't determined, where would I be now? I don't know. Where would the kids be? I don't know. So I had to be determined and believe in myself. And sometimes that's really difficult. As human beings, we doubt ourselves. We doubt ourselves because we let fear take over us. And that's natural. But you need to rise above that and find it within yourself to be courageous enough to be determined to get to where you want to get to.
Fantastic. If you're listening to this, make sure you share it with your friends. There's been some amazing stuff on the show tonight. And Zagi, it's been just so great having you. And so what would be your third tip? Stay
positive.
Positive. Yeah.
And that's a hard one at times, I know. Because again, we're all human and it's very easy not to be positive. But I think energies feed off energies. So if you're going to be negative, then negativity you will attract. It's just the laws of nature, I think. And again, I've only learned that the older I'm getting. You need to be positive and truly believe in what your purpose is and what your goal is and what you're here to achieve. Otherwise, you'll feel unfulfilled when you get to a certain age. So remain positive and believe in yourself.
You know what? Not a bad first 3. I wonder what the next 2 are going to be, Julio. What's number 4?
Be fierce and fearless.
Okay. So that's is that sort of linked to the courage, is it, or just sort of?
Yeah, I think they all work hand in hand, to be honest. I think if you're fierce, then you're not letting your fears take over and you become fearless. And then when you're fearless, then you are more inclined to be determined and find that courage within yourself. When we're born, we're not born knowing what fear is. We are taught fear. So we need to remind ourselves as adults that when we're children, we're not born to know what fear is. We're taught fear. So,
But don't you get fearful when you make a few mistakes, and that makes you a bit more tentative?
Who taught us that, Matt? Mark? Who taught us that? I mean, we're taught fear. Think about when we were children, right? And the risks we took running through certain water or jumping off, and even, I mean, for me to do the monkey bars now, I'd probably be very scared to do that, or jump off some of the things I used to jump off as a kid. I think no way in hell. But that's because I've been taught that that's dangerous. So, I mean, fear isn't a natural instinct that you're born with. Startle reflex is something you're born with. As a baby, you see that, and that's why we swaddle babies when they're born, because startle reflex is a natural reflex. But fear isn't something you're born with. You're taught fear. That's my opinion. So I think it's important. Fearless and fierce. You need to fight for what you believe in and be fierce about achieving what you want to achieve. Because if you give up, you're not going to get there. If I gave
it's so great.
All the way to the high court, and believe you me, it was like rolling a dice. It could have cost me my whole career. But I had to be fearless. And I had to.
Do you think people these days have got many causes they're fierce about, that they're just going to be determined to push through? I mean, have people got these sort of causes?
I think there are a lot of people out there that do have those causes, and that's why they are where they're at. It's those people that are the women that have made changes in our society. It's the fact that they're fearless. They don't fear being judged either. We as a society are really good at judging people and forming opinions. Leaders don't fear judgment.
Yeah.
They stand up for what they believe in and the cause that they're fighting for.
That's great stuff. And what about the last one, Zagi? It's been fantastic.
You've caught me off guard. But anyway, The last one would have to be passion. You have to be passionate. Passion is important, because without passion, what are you fighting for? So your cause has to come from an embedded passion, a belief system, something that is a part of you, that forms you. The law is my passion, and therefore the things that I can only talk about from my own experience, like in the causes I've fought for. I'm passionate about the law. I was passionate about the job I did at that time. I still feel very passionate about it. I miss my job very much. I loved it. And I think that is what made me determined and courageous and fierce and fearless enough to fight it to the death, to the end.
And Zagi, I think that's what's giving you your purpose, eh?
Yeah, you're right, Mark. You're right.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of my peers judged me, and it was heartbreaking to see some of my peers pretend that they didn't know me because they were fearful of being judged by others talking to me. talking to the one that was outspoken, yeah? But all of a sudden, I'm hailed the hero, yeah? So society can be cruel, but it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's determination, and it's my passion. That was my passion, to fight for what I believed in, and that is to look after people that are exposed to vicarious trauma, because it's not easy. And yes, the critics will say, you knew what you were going to get yourself into. You knew that you were going to see this, that, or experience whatever you were going to experience. Yeah, you do know. But how are you meant to know how it's going to affect you in the long term? And
you can still be looked after.
That's right. But that's through education. And again, this is what I was talking about from the beginning. It's through generation to generation to generation that we lead by example. Leading by example is educating our future. Educating our future brings on awareness. And the more we talk about things, the more we learn.
Well, it's been great talking about things tonight, that's for sure. Yeah. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We're coming right to the end of the show, but it's been fantastic on 98.9 Northwest FM. It's Community Heart Radio celebrating International Women's Day with one of the true leaders, champions for women out there, which is Zagi, one of the top lawyers. Julio's going to let us know about the top five, and Kelly's put a few comments down here, and Julio, just give us a quick top five.
Okay, we've got number 1, 4 women, have courage. Number 2, be determined. Number 3, stay positive. Number 4, be fierce, be fearless. And number 5, be passionate.
It's been great having you on the show, Zagi. I'm just going to stretch you a little bit more. We've got 3 comments from Kelly. I'm going to get you to read them all, and we'll have a quick look at all comments, and then maybe make a statement. You're not going to be able to answer all her questions, but there might be some comment you want to make when we see it. This one is, how do we show changes need to be made in the workforce for women? Many do many things and are great at stepping up, but they aren't rewarded for doing so across many sectors. I mean, I suppose you know that one.
Yeah.
Kelly completely agrees with you, so that's fantastic. And then the last one, how do we remain fearless, strong, and courageous? Why don't we finish with that one, because that's a big one as well.
How do we remain fearless, strong, and courageous? You know what? I will answer that this way, and that's based on my own experience. Look deep within yourself and be true to yourself and what you believe in. So if you're true to yourself and what you believe in, then you will find it within yourself to be strong, to be fearless, and to be courageous, because you need to be true to yourself. And if you're true to yourself, then you will fight to the death to get to where you want to get to.
Well, Zagi, I think I tell you, we've opened a few subjects tonight that we could be here all night talking about. We're going to have you back at some point, because I've got a few questions to ask you more, and we've run out of time. But Julio, it's been an amazing night, hasn't it?
It's been really good. Thanks very much. It's been an amazing program.
Me.
Yes.
I just want to wish all the women out there a happy International Women's Day, and you should all be very proud of yourselves and celebrate the beautiful women that you are. And may we continue to raise fearless women.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Agreed.
Thanks for joining us tonight on 98.9 Northwest FM, Community Heart Radio, celebrating International Women's Day.
Thanks, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Tune in every Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. or watch us on YouTube, Facebook, and follow us on LinkedIn and other social media.